And we are live. Welcome to Homemaking with Purpose, where we bring to you the best ideas, interviews, and information for today's homemaker. On tonight's show, we welcome Mary from Mary's Nest, a traditional homemaker extraordinaire, I should say, and also a modern pioneer, at least in the kitchen. What's a modern pioneer? What's an unprocessed food kitchen? Is any of this right for you? We'll get answers to those questions and more tonight. But before I bring Mary on, if we're just meeting, I'm Denise Jordan, and I teach traditional homemaking for today's homemaker. So if that sounds like something that you want to learn about, then hit the subscribe button and double tap the little bell icon so you don't miss any upcoming videos. And then tonight's video is brought to you by Apron Diva, our online apron boutique. Pretty and practical, we believe that an apron can be a homemaker's best accessory. And look who's wearing one of our accessories tonight. It is Mary from Mary's Nest. This particular apron is on sale at 10% off. Use the discount code CHRIS10 at checkout. So let me stop sharing that and come on back over here. And we will get into it. So we see over here Taylor, who is saying hello to Mary. And then she said she is excited for this Q&A. We've got Deborah Hardesty from Oklahoma. Good evening, sweet Mary. She must be one of your people saying good evening, and she's looking forward to the chat. And Chicago Jack is saying, hey, sweet Mary from Western Montana. All your people are jumping on to say hello. And I told them they jumped on early. So I had sent them a note and said, you guys are early. And Chicago Jack said, we don't want to miss anything. And so we've got Catherine from Georgia and Taylor from Montana. And then Leanne is one of my people. She's saying hello and welcome, Mary. And just so many people are jumping on. So, Mary, I want to thank you for coming on. I am just so glad you are here.
Oh, Denise, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. It's so kind of you to think of having me on your Homemaker show.
Oh, well, of course. You know, like I always say, you're my sister from another mister. And if we lived in the same town, we would be best friends. But, you know, we live a long way away.
Yes. So, and we were just saying, boy, if we lived close together, it'd be terrific.
So, hey, Nefertiri, good to have you. Karen Kincaid is here as well. Auntie's Backyard is here. Melissa from it's Thelma. It's either Thelma or Charlotte from Simple Southern Reflections. Christy McCullough. Hey, Christy. And then, of course, one of my people, Khadija from Her Healthy Home. And then, of course, Miss Congeniality, Miss C, I call her. She's always here to welcome our new guests. And Miss C, you will love Mary. She said she watches what she calls dainty YouTubers from time to time. And I think you might fall into that category just a little bit. You're going to love her, Miss C. You're going to love her. So welcome, everybody. And it's just kind of good to have you guys all here. And Mary, I have to say, I just love your channel because whatever you're making, you make it so easy to understand. You are just so encouraging and so easy to follow.
Oh, you're so sweet to say that. Thank you very much. I try to do my best.
Yes, you really do. And I made several of your recipes, including your apple pork chops.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, that one's going to be dropping I don't remember. It's either this week or next week, but I've already got it uploaded and deployed. But I made that
one. I'm so happy to hear that.
Oh, it was delicious. My husband loved it.
Those are just falling off the bone delicious. We love them.
Yeah, they are.
I have to space out how often I make them.
Yeah, my husband told me tonight, he says, okay, we've had enough pork. We're going to need to kind of slow down on that for a while.
Yes.
So now before we get into tonight's Q&A, let me just ask you for you to tell us about your family, like how long you've been married, children or not, how you met your hubby. And I know there's a story there.
Well, I've been married about 25 years,
Okay.
and we have one son. And I got married a little later in life. And so we got married, and then I got pregnant very quickly, and I wound up having a baby in my early 40s, which was such a blessing. So
Yeah.
he's a grown man now. He lives about 2 hours from us. And let's see. Well, I think Denise knows this. I met my husband at the airport in Austin,
Oh
Texas,
no.
while traveling. And he was just such a nice fella. And we were on the same plane together. And it was Southwest Airlines, which is funny because their little symbol is LUV, love.
Oh.
And so we just got to chatting, and we really hit it off, and we exchanged business cards. And before you knew it, one thing left to another and led to another. And I'll tell you, we had 7 dates, and he proposed.
7 dates and he proposed. I guess he figured if you guys are shouldn't mess around. When you find it and it's right, it's right. Well, then hey, that's the way to do it.
It was so funny because I was a little hesitant to date him because my husband is 10 years younger than me.
And, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I said to my father, oh, I don't know. He's a little younger than me. He goes, oh, what the heck? You're new here. Go on a date. You're not going to get married. And 7 dates later, I went to see my parents, and I was like, I have an engagement ring.
Oh, that is true. And 25 years later, here you are.
Here we are.
All right. So Leanne says that you lived a Hallmark movie.
A lot of people tell me that.
Which we know is one of your favorite things.
It is. It's funny you were asking me, about my favorite TV shows and stuff. I got to tell you, I love TV, but I get very little time to watch TV.
Mm-hmm.
But when I can, God bless my husband, because it's going to be just an estrogen night.
Okay, I got it.
I'm going to turn on those romance movies on Hallmark.
Okay. So have you always been a stay-at-home wife and mom since you've been married, or did you work outside the home before the baby came?
I worked outside. I got pregnant literally like 2 or 3 weeks after we got married.
Oh, okay.
And I had, as I said, I was in my early 40s, and I worked outside the home. I just was a working woman, single working woman. And when we got married, we got back from our honeymoon, and then it was like about a week later or so, I think. And, I said to my husband, I'm not feeling too good. And he's like, oh, you'll be okay. It was cute too, because he said to me later, oh, I had a feeling you might be pregnant.
Oh, that is too funny.
But so about a few weeks, it was very early. I was really, really early on learning that I was pregnant. And so I said to my husband, my doctor said, oh, you're in your early 40s, is there any way you can kind of take it easy, and so, not work so hard and all. So I said to my husband, I always tell him it was like a bait and switch, because I said, would it be okay if I was a stay-at-home mom to be and then a stay-at-home mom? And he said, oh, I would love that. Definitely. That's great. So we sold our home in Austin, and then we moved out here because it'd be less expensive and whatnot. And we just kind of changed our lifestyle a little. And I always loved to cook. And, my mom's in her late 90s, she was born in the 1920s. And so she had raised me, in that even though I became a working woman, she had raised me in that very traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really nice, to suddenly, like they say, nesting, when you're pregnant and, having the children that you have. And so I really enjoyed that, and just kind of cooking. And, although I will confess, after having been single so long, after the baby was born, I didn't know it was possible for just 3 people to have so much wash. And I love your videos, because to this day, I need help with the wash.
All right.
No.
That is too funny. Well, let me ask you this. How long have you been enamored with the modern pioneer kitchen? Let's talk about that.
Well, that's an interesting thing. I uh, was raised, as I said, my mom is in her late 90s, born in the 20s. And she and my father lived through the Great Depression of the 1930s and then all the, rationing of food during World War II. And so my parents were always very, very just like very thrifty.
Hmm.
Nothing ever went to waste. And we lived in sort of, today, I grew up in New York, outside of New York City, and where we lived was back then a little country. My parents had a house on about 3 acres, I think, and we had a well and, all of that, and a septic system, the works. And my father had coffee cans, with every screw and nail and this and that. And
Hmm.
my mom had the pantry all stocked. We could survive any snowstorm. She had water in container. There was no like bottled water back then, but she would like
Yeah.
have containers with water. One year our well got hit with lightning. So I was really raised by people who were really in, although not technically like pioneers,
Hmm.
going across the West, they were very self-sufficient. Nothing went to waste. Everything was homemade. I'll tell you a cute story to give you an example of the mindset that I was raised by. When I was first married, I was shopping with my mother at the grocery store, and I just picked off the shelf. I wasn't even putting it in my cart or anything, a bottle of olive oil, and it was $17. And my mother looked at me and said, "You put that olive oil back right now. Your husband works hard for the money. You don't need to be spending $17 on but it was just very cute. So that's how I was just raised with this
Okay.
way of thinking. And even as a single girl, in my little house, my basement, I had metal shelves and I had it all stocked with foods that I would need in the event, because I lived back east, in the event, there was a snowstorm. And I was always, cooking on the weekend and
Hmm.
just to be uh trying to do and use these skills that my mother had taught me. So that's
Okay.
kind of, it's been sort of all my life.
Okay. So one of the things that you do talk about on your channel is nutrient dense food and food for the modern pioneer. Can you tell me what that is and how we, the viewers, can embrace that?
Well, that's a good question. Nutrient dense foods that's a term that about 20 or so years ago was new to me.
Hmm.
I think most people eat some nutrient dense foods, meaning foods that are very compacted with nutrition.
Hmm.
But I came across this book, Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon, and she talked about how we needed to have more nutrient dense foods in our diet. And I was so happy because it was things like butter, and liver, and dare I say lard. Everybody kind of panics when I start talking about lard.
I do too.
It was always, and I know something that when I mention it, you kind of get the willies from, which we'll talk about later. But all these things, and so I was so happy to see this book. And so and I think I've shared this with you, I had to homeschool my son from first through eighth grade because he had very severe dyslexia, and
Mm.
the little public school at the time didn't have any kind of, you know, what they call like remediation for reading or any reading tutors. Nothing. They didn't have anything like that back then. And so they advised me that I should homeschool. And he was going. I was having to take him like to just hire a reading tutor, And she was actually a student who was just getting her hours so that she could become certified. So we were just kind of cobbling all this together. But and my gosh, I was like from New York City and they're telling me homeschooling. And I'm like, homeschooling? I don't know anything about it. And I'm a new mom, whatever. But in any event, I had that book. And a lot of it was very much like the way my mother had cooked,
Mhm.
sourdough. And, she always had things sort of bubbling on the counter. We didn't use the term ferments,
Mhm.
but she would make these things that were pickled. That's what she would call them, but they were sitting out on the counter, and things
Mhm.
like that. And then I got this book, and then I'm homeschooling, and then I meet these young mothers who are also homeschooling, and they're like, "Oh, can you know how to do a lot of this stuff, bone broth and cultured dairy and ferments and sourdough starter? Can you teach us?" So I just started teaching this in my kitchen.
Mhm.
And then when YouTube came along and my son said, "Oh, mom, you should put your lessons on YouTube." And so that's kind of how that all started. And what I wanted to share with people was to how to make these nutrient dense foods like bone broth, cultured dairy, ferments, sourdough starter, and sourdough bread, because they're all nutrient rich. They're very good for us. They're very filled with vitamins and minerals. And like when you ferment something, you increase the nutrients of those vegetables. And so that was something that I wanted to share. However, when I talk about transitioning from a processed foods kitchen to a traditional foods kitchen, which is a kitchen that will be where you're making nutrient dense foods, the one thing I always tell people is never overwhelm yourself. Never try to do all of this on day one. I think to everybody watching tonight, especially those that are new to me, I really want to say to homemakers, especially young homemakers, start small. And these things, as I've often said, are very persnickety. They can take a lot of time and patience. You're looking at a year or 2 years, and you start small. I always tell people, I think you had asked me this once, where do I say to start? And the big thing, just learn how to roast a chicken. You learn how to roast a chicken and you can even do it in a cast iron frying pan if you don't have a roasting pan. And you throw in some potatoes, carrots, onions, whatever you want. You have a nice meal. You feed whoever you have to feed, yourself, your family, your friends. Whatever you have left over, you save and you can make another meal with that. Then you've got the
Mhm.
carcass. You can make bone broth. And that's a very easy way to get started on your journey to creating nutrient dense foods, because bone broth is very nutrient rich, nutrient dense. And what's nice is if you're on a really tight budget and you have very limited protein, bone broth is what they call a protein sparer, meaning that it helps you absorb every ounce of protein that you do have available to eat.
Mhm.
So if you only have a few scraps left over from that chicken and you chop those up and then you make the bone broth and you make a soup with the bone broth, yourself, your family, friends, whomever you're feeding will get a lot of protein, even though you've just got a little bit of chicken in there.
Okay.
So that's kind of, but to just go really slow, that's really important, I think, to homemakers. Don't overwhelm yourself. I've known people who they say, "I'm starting today," and they clear everything out of their pantry, and then they, try. I People have never made bread before, and then they are trying to do a sourdough starter. It's overwhelming.
So is there a difference in the way the food tastes? So let's say all of a sudden I want to go to a non-processed food kitchen, and so I'm going to start cooking that way. Is my family going to notice the difference?
Oh, yes, and I think that's why you kinda have to go slow. I hear from so many moms, they finally master their sourdough starter and they make sourdough bread, and the little children say, "Oh, it's so sour, I don't like it," And so that's why, I have a little video where I show you how to kind of do a quick and easy sourdough bread. And is it real sourdough? No, but it only has like a 2-hour rise, but you're using your starter, and it's not as sour as something that's, been sitting overnight. And so that's a good way. I really believe you got to introduce these foods slowly
Okay.
and get your palate adjusted to it. And especially, but there's so many things, like I think very few people will turn their nose up to a roast chicken. And if you
Well,
use
speaking of that, though, since you were talking about bread, I made your no-knead sandwich bread. I made it a few times since then. So the first
I'm
time
glad.
I made it, I did a video where I just kind of did the step-by-step, and I was all excited when it rose and all that. And my family loved it. So I made it a couple times since then. I made it a couple weeks ago because we were out of bread. So I thought, what the heck? I got all this flour on my prep shelf, so make some bread. And it turned out so nice. I might try to find well, I'm not going to look for it because I'll mess something up trying to look for it. But it turned out so nicely. It just so nice.
I'm so happy to hear that. Yeah, and that's
It was
really
easy.
that's a wonderful one to start with, because that's, you're using yeast. And that's what a lot of people will say to me, oh, I want to do a sourdough starter and I want to make sourdough bread. And then I say, have you ever baked bread before? And they'll be like, no. And I'll say, don't overwhelm yourself. Trying to do a sourdough starter and then make sourdough bread, you might be overwhelmed. Just make this no-knead sandwich bread. It's very easy. You
Let
just
me
need
see if I can grab
flour and yeast.
that real
Oh,
quick.
don't worry about it.
No, I'm going to share yours. I know how to share yours because I've got that. I've got that all.
Yours.
Hmm?
Are you looking for find yours?
Well, I already got your stuff pulled up, so I can find yours pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
So let me try to see if I can find where you had the no-knead sandwich bread. I'll just type it in here.
There's my son.
Yeah, no-knead sandwich bread, because it was so easy to do. It really was. So here it was right there, and it was so easy. You've got a couple different ones in there, and like I said, it looked so easy, and my bread looked just like this one right there. It really did. It puffed up over the top. It was amazing. And so I'm going to try the sourdough bread next. And then you've got several in this baking list, which I really like. So I think for those homemakers out there that want to try some bread, you've got to try it. Oh, and look, we've got somebody over here saying there's Mary and she's wearing her apron. Yes, she
is.
Yes.
Denise sent me this apron, and I have got to tell you, this is like one of the quality is amazing. It's just so thick and sturdy. I love this. And, and also too, all the ingredients,
all the ingredients
are fabulous. But this is really, as I was telling you before, Denise, the quality is just fantastic.
Well, thank you.
I'm so excited you're doing this.
So now I'm going to go on to my next question. Now, you and me, we can get to talking and go.
I know.
It's because I'm trying to be conscious of the time, and I don't want to keep you too long. But ladies, when me and Mary get on the phone, we can be on the phone for an hour. So we don't talk too often because we don't know how to stop. So the next question I want to ask you about is the no-waste kitchen. Tell us about how we can have a no-waste kitchen. And since I've gotten to know you, I really started incorporating more and more of your ideas into my kitchen. And you'll be amazed to know that last night I made a tincture with vodka and a tincture with apple cider vinegar. Khadija at her Healthy Home has an herb course. And she showed us how to get started last night with tinctures. So,
oh, wow.
I wouldn't have thought about that kind of stuff if I had have met you. Tell us about the no-waste kitchen and a little bit about that.
Well, really, as I mentioned earlier, having parents who were very thrifty, my mother never threw anything out. I mean, even my father would make me laugh. He would show me stuff. And this is like when I'm an adult, and he would say, this is older than you. And the same with my mother, very, very thrifty. And my mother would use she was so conscientious about how she shopped, and she would use every little scrap to cook, and she would find some way to use everything. And so, she really, if she would be over at my house and she'd see me put something in the garbage, she'd be like, my gosh, what are you throwing out? What are you wasting? And so I really learned from her. And basically what that means is really look at like when you shop and when you have everything in your refrigerator, really look at what you have when it's time to make your meals. And then when, as the week, especially with your fresh fruits and vegetables and other fresh foods you may have, cheeses, whatever the case may be in your refrigerator, really study on it. And as the week progresses, if you shop weekly or twice, every other week or whatever the case may be, as you're winding down, really look at what you have and either make a soup or, pickle scrap. It's so easy to make a quick pickle and it can just be a bunch of scraps and nobody's going to know it's scraps. And you had talked about making the egg muffins. It's recipes like that I love, because basically all you need is eggs to start. And then everything else can be stuff, I call them clean out the crisper recipes, because how many of us will open the crisper and we'll be like, oh my gosh, that's like starting to go off. I can't really make a salad with it. But it's amazing. You can use these things, even if they're a little wilted, a soup. You can put them into a quiche or a frittata or those egg muffins. There's so many different things that you can do to not waste anything. And then, as you and I have chatted about, there's a lot that you can dehydrate. And there are things that, yes, you do need a dehydrator for. So that means buying some equipment. But those dehydrators, I really think over time pay for themselves. But there's a lot of things you can dehydrate in the oven, so, and you can turn them into powders, and then you can turn them into different types of seasonings.
Well, that's the thing that I saw last week was when you did the video on the tomato powders. I always threw my tomato skins away. And then I thought, oh, we can make something with those. So I'm going to try that. But the other thing that I think most about with the No Waste Kitchen, and my sister, Tina Robbins, has just jumped on. She has said,
hi, Tina.
There's my sister there, Tina Robbins, and my other sister, Mickey.
Hi, Mickey.
But Tina was over. She was here. She lives in Delaware, but she was here for a few weeks. And I had made a roast chicken, and she was going to throw the bones away. And I said, don't throw those bones away. She's like, you want the bones? And I said, I'm going to rinse them off, and then I'm going to put them in the freezer, and I'm going to make bone broth. So I do save my bones from chicken, roasted chicken. If I roast a chicken, I'll even save some of the drippings off of that. I'll strain it first and all that. So I really try to save things. And when I have some carrots or celery that's less than stellar, I'll put it in the freezer and use it to season my bone broth. So I have learned that from you also, because I used to just pitch it.
Oh yeah, no, you don't throw anything. You really look at something, and it has got to really be in a bad place to actually go into the garbage. And then if you have a compost, if you're doing garden and you have a composter and it's something you can put in your composter, all the better. But yeah, those little bottoms of the celery, carrots, as I tell people, never throw out onion skins.
I save all that stuff now, but I didn't.
And they don't need to be organic. They're in the Clean 15. Very little pesticides are used on onions, and you save those skins. Do you know they have so many nutrients like the actual onion? So don't, all into the scrap bag, into your freezer.
Okay, so I got a quick question for you. Here on the screen, Mariah wants to know, do we compost? I don't, but my husband tried it for a little while because he was trying to grow worms, but then he stopped. So do you compost?
I do. And you know what, really, I've done this for many years, and I've learned a lot of different things over the years. Something that I find really helps if you're getting started with composting is start with maybe a little putting in first of all, I've had different types of composters, and I really like the type that have a handle that you can turn so
Mhm.
that it's like easy to spin. And when my son was young, he'd like just push it, and it would spin.
Mhm.
You kind of got to be a little religious about that. You're going to kind of keep everything moist. I start when back in the day when I was actually starting, I learned from somebody who was really a really good gardener to make things easier on yourself and put in a little bag of topsoil just to help get you started. And then we would put in leaves, and then we would just start putting in uh, our, like garden clippings and things like that, and
Mhm.
just keep spinning it. And then I keep a little trash can in the kitchen and things and I sometimes have to look it up to make sure that what I'm putting in, I think one of the most important things is keep a little list or a little book or, whatever you have, or a website, so that what you're putting into your composter is approved.
Okay.
Because if you put something in it that's not approved, it can really create problems.
So
But
now what do you mean? Because I thought you could just compost anything, but I guess
yeah,
you're not supposed to put proteins out
yeah,
there.
you're not supposed to put protein. That's primarily what I'm thinking about. You're not supposed to put meat scraps and things like that. So that, speaking of no waste, is, you save every scrap of meat, and if I do the chicken, if I roast the chicken, and there's just the two of us now, unless our son is home, then there's three of us. But I always have a good amount of leftovers.
Mhm.
So all the nice chicken meat, I'll put that aside, and I'll either do, I'm in Texas, so we'll do chicken tacos, or I might do a chicken salad. And then with the carcass, then I pick off every little scrap on that
Mhm.
carcass. And that's saved in a separate little bag, because that's going to be the chicken meat for my chicken soup that I'm going to make
Okay.
with the bone broth that I make from the carcass. So
Boom, ladies.
you get
No way
you
kitchen.
get like 3 meals out of it. And even you could say 4, because you're going to have way more bone broth than you need for soup,
Mhm.
and then you have like some sipping broth and things like that. But no, today chickens are expensive,
Yeah.
and so you got
Here's
to
a
get
question here or comment to you from Catherine about 40 pounds of frozen veggies.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to dehydrate and powder most of it. Spinach, kale, and peas are a no-brainer. I've got a soup mix coming, and carrots. Suggestions. That's a good idea. You know what you can do? You can even do, if you have carrots and onions and celery, you can dehydrate all of those, put them in a big jar. I have this over in my pantry. And then if you are doing a recipe that calls where you have to do, the French call it a mirepoix, where you need the carrots and the celery and the onions as your base, you've got it already mixed together in a jar. And
Oh,
and the soup mix, so that I'm wondering if that's what she's meaning, like by the mirepoix, the onions and the carrots and the celery
are you
plus
freezing it that
carrots.
way or canning it that way?
Is she canning the soup
So
mix?
how are you mixing the spinach, well, the carrots, the onions, and the celery in the jar? Are you
Oh,
freezing it?
I dehydrate all of it,
Eat it.
and then I put it into a jar all mixed together. And then when I have to do a soup or something, I don't have to cut up anything. I throw that into my soup pot with a
Okay.
little olive oil or butter, a little liquid, help it reconstitute. And then I go on with making my soup. And so that's done. The other thing that can be really good, and I'm not sure what other veggie she might be getting, but there is something that is really wonderful to do if you want to have like people buy the little cubes at the grocery store, like bouillon cubes.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can make your own vegetable bouillon cubes, because you can put some salt into, if you have a blender or a food processor or whatever, and you put in all your your veggies can be frozen, it doesn't matter. You can put all of your frozen veggies in, and you'll put in some salt, and you whirl it all around and it looks like a little mush, for lack of a better word. And then you go ahead and put that in your freezer. Or if you want to take it one more step further, you spread that mush, which is now it's mixed with salt and veggies, and you spread this out on your dehydrator trays or parchment paper on a baking sheet in your oven. You don't need special equipment. And then you just dehydrate that. And now you have, they're not cubes, but you have bouillon powder. I love having this on hand, and it's just a vegetable powder, it's like a vegetable bouillon powder. And then in the winter during cold and flu season, if anybody's feeling under the weather, you can just take a teaspoon of that and you put it, and it's like, people sometimes they get a little overwhelmed when I show the recipe because I'm putting like a cup of salt, but I've got like a ton of vegetables and you are making a bouillon. And then you can take a teaspoon of that and put that in a teacup, add 8 ounces of hot water, and you have a nice vegetable bouillon to sip and to feel better. And it also makes a great base if you just want a base for a vegetable soup or
I like
soup.
that idea.
Isn't that a good idea?
That's a great idea.
Any soup you can make. And it's funny, I'm not complimenting myself. It sounds so funny. I'm like, yeah, isn't that a good idea? I'm so smart. No, this is a common thing that people have been doing for like 100 years. But no, it's very, my mother did this, and then, so you have that. And if you don't feel like drying it, you can stick it in your freezer. Basically the shelf life is it becomes almost like a forever food. Granted, it does lose, some nutritional value, after a long time, but you'll use it up before it probably loses any nutritional value. And it's like, it almost becomes like a forever food because all that salt, is very, makes a great preservative. But it's
okay. I'm going to go ahead and just cut you off right here.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. So we got One Pot Doc who said he just made gumbo using leftover smothered hen, stewed chicken gizzards that they'd had in the freezer, smoked sausage, and frozen okra had for months. So that's a good way to use up some things that are there.
That
and
is
then,
wonderful. Oh, I'll bet you that was delicious.
And do the I was going to check to see if we had any other questions, but I don't see any right now. And so since it is 8:22, I'm going to go ahead and do the apron note giveaway. So let's do that. So Mary at Apron Diva, one of the things that we like to do is put an apron note in every order.
Yes.
And the purpose of the apron note is to remind each of you homemakers how special you really are. And it is our hope that you would think of this apron note as a words of encouragement from your dearest friend. And we always say, like Mickey Blue Skies and I, we work the business together, and we always say, you don't choose the note chooses you. And we have about 10 different notes, and each note is randomly assigned to an order. So we don't know who's getting what. And here's the note we've got picked for tonight. And the note for tonight is homemaking is a work of heart.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I just really think that it's so true. So Mickey Blue Skies is going to choose a random viewer for the winner. And you as our host will also get an apron note. So I'll send this out to you as well as to one lucky viewer.
Oh, thank you.
And she just sent me. So while the viewers are talking about the note, so tell me, Mary, what does this note mean to you?
Oh, I really think that a homemaker, that's it, homemaking, from the heart, but it's it's like the expression, the kitchen is the heart of the home. Often it's the homemakers who is the heart of the home,
right?
And what do you?
Tonight's winner is Linda Barrett.
Oh, wonderful.
All right. So Linda Barrett, you are tonight's winner of the apron note. So be sure and email me your address. And email me your address at thisandthatwithdenise@gmail.com. Email me your address. Don't put it in the chat, but email it to me and I will send you this apron note. And Mary, you will get the same apron note
Oh, thank you. It's
as
beautiful.
well. And then also, this is just a quick reminder that our featured apron for tonight is the Chris, which is hanging on the door back there. And Mary is also wearing it. And there is a 10%.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's 10% off this week for the show. So it's until the next show, then we'll have a new one. And you use the discount code Chris, which is Chris10 at checkout. And that's your discount code for this week. So, oh wait, I got to get that off the screen. There we go. All right.
You know, something I have to tell everybody about this apron, which is so clever, Denise.
What?
It's such a great apron here. The piece that goes around your neck and the piece that ties behind your waist are all one. They're all like connected through a tunnel here. And I love that because you don't have that metal thing you got to fool with, and you don't have a metal thing cold on your neck, you know, and it's just so easy. Boom, you put it on and then you pull the ties and everything adjusts just the way you want. I love that.
Okay, so I'm putting Linda Barrett's name down there so she can see it. So be sure and send me your email address, Linda, so that I can send that out to you. Okay, so Mary, let's talk about the Four Corners Pantry. And I did a video last week, and it was about reminding people that if they've stopped prepping, it is time for them to get back at it. If you guys missed that video, I will link it below in the description box and in the iCard above. And Mary, I must say, it wasn't a video that I wanted to make. I had been putting off making this video about that. And I thought, okay, I got to get back to it. And I mentioned that if they had stopped building their extended pantry, they needed to work on it. And I made the comment about a Four Corners pantry. And somebody said, what's that? And I said, well, I learned that term from my friend Mary at Mary's Nest. But since you're here, can you tell us what a Four Corners pantry is and why we need to have one?
Oh, definitely. And I just want to say, I see the comments over here and I see Tammy's house is asking how long do chicken bones take to make bone broth? You just simmer them on very low for 6 hours. So it's very easy. But the Four Corners Pantry, and I have to be honest with you, I think I learned about this. It's been a long time now, but I think I learned about this, the expression from another gal on YouTube. And gosh, I forget. I don't know. You know, this is way back when I was just like watching videos long before I made videos. And I thought, well, that's a clever expression. And what it is your main working pantry, what you access every day, could be a cabinet or a closet in your kitchen. And my dream is to one day have a walk-in pantry. I love that. I live in an old house. I just have a little closet, but a closet or a cabinet. And then that's your first, so to speak, your first corner. And then you've got your refrigerator and then your freezer. And then the fourth corner is what you're talking about, the extended pantry, or today it's commonly called the prepper pantry. And that's really important because you want to start building that up, and you don't have to do it overnight. You know, people get very stressed and they say, oh my gosh, you know, I got to like get all this stuff and my budget doesn't allow. And that's why I always say, just add a few dollars a week extra to your grocery budget and buy what you eat. You know,
yes, that is so important. Buy what you eat and eat what you buy.
Exactly. And you just make a list, you know, your grocery list. What do you normally buy every week or every month whenever you go grocery shopping? And then you have all your non-perishables. And then as for your perishables, you say, well, what can I buy in place of that will be non-perishable? So if you're used to buying a chicken, then you might say, well, can I buy some canned chicken and find some recipes for how to use that? And you put these things in your extended pantry and you start to develop, but you're going to use them. You're going to rotate them. You know, sometimes you are going to eat canned chicken, even if there's no emergency or anything like that. And so you start rotating these things through your extended pantry. You fill your working pantry when things go low. You basically go shopping in your extended pantry, and then next time you're out, you add a little bit more to your extended pantry to replace whatever you refilled your working pantry with, and you start to get a little repertoire of recipes for how to use these different canned foods. And the non-perishable foods that you buy already and use, obviously you already know how to use those.
I'm going to hold you up for a second,
Oh,
Mary.
sure.
Somebody is asking a question about flour and rice, which Mickey Blue Skies I can't find. So can you find that for me and pop it up here? Or the person that had the flour and rice question, you guys are going so fast in the chat. I've missed it. So put it in again. And then as soon as it pops up again, I'll try to get it. Mary, people are starting to ask questions. So finish your comment, and I'm looking for the lady's flour and rice question, and there were several other ones, so I'll try to find them.
Well, I think the pantry, when it comes to this, it's so important. And I think it's especially a hot topic these days because of everything we went through in 2020, when sometimes it was really hard to find things at the grocery store. And sometimes, prices, have been going up. And so people, start to get a little worried. But I think the big thing is, stay calm, don't worry. Everything's going to be okay, but it's just about being prepared, because that extended pantry can get you through. If you are in a bad weather situation and you can stay in your home, that extended pantry can really help you get through. Last February here in Texas, we had very unusual winter storms. I mean, it was like unheard of. It was like 5 degrees, and we had ice and snow, and we had no heat, we had no electricity. Some of our friends had no water. It was crazy. But boy, having that extended pantry was wonderful. And what's so nice is you really have a good feeling, because obviously you can feed your family, but our friends who had no water, once the roads were passable, they were able to come to our home, and we were able to send them home with a lot of bottled water. And that got them through those 4 days, when they had no water. So that you feel happy, that you can help other people. But I think the big thing is, you just start putting your lists together. What are all the non-perishable things that you buy? What are the substitutes for your perishables? And then decide a place, where you think you can store some of this. And sometimes you have to be a little creative, And then you just start adding little by little. And I really think that over time, and it doesn't need to be done right away, but I think having a couple of months supply, definitely you want your 3-day emergency stuff, like, what is it? The Federal Emergency Management Agency here in the United States. And I'm sure those of you who may live in other countries have something similar. They always tell you have at least 3 days, because if there's something terrible that were to happen, it may be 3 days before help can get to you. But I think over time, as you really start to think about filling your prepper pantry or your extended pantry, it's very important to say, well, okay, where do I live and what might happen? And what are just some life situations that can happen? And maybe I want to have 2 or 3 months worth of food on hand, because what if I get sick? And I can't work? Or what if I lose my job? And it takes me a couple of months. In my area, how long does it usually take people to find jobs? And I've heard from so many people you're in my social circle, Denise, that have said, boy, having that extended pantry was a lifesaver when I lost my job,
Well, and that's the thing. I know when the shutdown came, I had been stocking up on things, and I was prepared. So we didn't have to go out and get anything. And I had things that I could share with family. And a lot of people were like, oh, poo-pooing, what are you saving all this stuff for? Are you crazy? And my 2 little granddaughters even teased me about all the toilet paper that I had stocked up. But I had stuff that I could share with other family members. And so the lady that had the question about the flour and rice, I can't find it. So if you could just pop it in again, And then I'll come to it, but I couldn't find her question, Mary.
Maybe it's about storing it, because I think you and I both get a lot of questions about how to store food
Mm-hmm.
if you wind up buying it in bulk. And when it comes to flour, I'm not a fan of stocking up on whole grain flour unless you think you're going to use it within maybe 6 months, maybe maximum a year. It can really, whole grain flat, once they're ground into flours, really have a lot of oils in them. And so
Mm-hmm.
they can go rancid very quickly, even when stored well. Now, can you store them in your freezer? Yes. In your fridge? Yes. And maybe extend that life a little bit longer. But what if you lose power?
Yeah.
And when you lose power, which we were without power for about a week, boy, we used all the perishable food first, but I had no way to cook it. And so what I couldn't cook, because it was 5 degrees outside, we had coolers outside with our frozen food. It was like crazy. But so and like all-purpose flour, bread flour where all the bran and the germ is removed. Uh, those you can basically store, if you store them real well in airtight containers, maybe 2 years. At some point, they start to take like on a little
Mm-hmm.
musty flavor. Maybe you've noticed that. If you know, I have. If I find like old flour and I'm like, oh, let me just use it, but then it's got like a little off flavor. I think the better thing to do is if you think you're going to be doing a lot of baking, and not just baking, because I'll share in a minute, but and you have a grain grinder, whether electric or even the old-fashioned one, where you actually grind your grain manually. Grain can store for a really long time.
Yeah. Someone here has a question about storing cornmeal. Doesn't it store better than flour? I don't know.
No, cornmeal, once it's ground, it's got a lot of oil in it,
Mm-hmm.
and so it can go rancid pretty quickly, like whole grain flours. If you can, and you like to make things with cornmeal, and you buy the right type of corn that you can store, I think whole corn, the corn that is made to be ground into cornmeal, can, if it's stored properly in those like airtight containers, I think maybe 8 to 10 years, maybe you can store it. Popcorn, that's not the type of
Ah.
corn you grow, but popcorn's like a forever food. And I'm
Okay.
not sure why, but that I find interesting. But a good resource, if you want to look up and find how to store food and how long food can be stored, um, is the Utah State University website. They have a lot of information on this, and it can be really helpful. Also, too, I wanted to mention about whole grains. If you want to store whole grains, just as a food source, they can easily be, assuming you have power, they can be cooked. You can eat wheat berries and rye berries
Oh, add a
and
little water, make a little mush.
einkorn berries. You can cook them the way you would cook rice and bone broth,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very nutritious. Or you can cook them with more liquid and make it like an oatmeal. So there's so much that you can do. I really learn from people who I had a girlfriend who, she had grown up Mormon, and it was funny because that's why Utah State University is very good at having all of this information, because I gather that I'm not Mormon, but people who are, in their religion, they have this thing about really storing
Yeah.
food, and so they have a lot of valuable information. And so this girlfriend of mine, she wasn't a practicing Mormon anymore, but she never lost that
Mm-hmm.
way of knowing how to store food. And so I learn more and more every day.
I got a note here from Burl Falk, and he says buy a
Well,
half-gallon jar. So another one of your people, I assume, buy half-gallon jars and use them with water, filled with water as fillers on short loaves in your pressure canner. You'll have sealed, boiled, potable water on hand, or make loads of water just to be sanitized.
that is such a good idea. I know a lot of people who do that, and that is an excellent idea. I think a lot of people who had done that during, who had decided that, it's so cost effective. And if you have the canning jars,
Oh, just can up your own water, still buying bottled water in the
yeah,
store.
exactly.
Oh,
Isn't
okay.
that, I mean, it's genius, isn't it?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
Burl
Okay.
is spot on. It's very, if you have the canning jars to spare, because sometimes they're in short supply, but when you see them, just, buy a couple of cases of canning jars and start
Okay.
canning up your own
Never
water.
thought
And
of
it's so
that.
easy to do. And what's so nice is it's water bath canning. So you don't, Burl, if that's how you're doing it, pressure canning can scare a lot of people. And also, you need special equipment for pressure canning. But you can just take a stock pot and put some, like a little, cooling rack or something in the bottom, and then put your jars in that and just bring that up to a boil, on your stove, and just boil it according to, what Burl is saying. Or, there are a lot of canning books that'll explain this as well. You just boil it for the time allotted. And then you've got, great, you've got fresh bottled water that you did yourself.
Yeah. Here's one from Mimsy Whimsy, and her name is Melinda, and she's our resident poet. But she says,
Oh,
"What foods should you store in case your electricity goes out?"
oh, that's a great question. I really learned a lot about that during those Texas storms, because I always took for granted that, oh, so what if we didn't have power? It's warm out. I'll go and use the grill. Not when it's 5 degrees and snowing, And
Well,
so
Mary, I will admit I did make a few things in the snow when
I
our
know, I know, I saw you were fantastic.
Well, you know what? This is the thing. I'm always telling my young homekeepers, you have to be prepared. So get a grill, do this, do that. So I thought, okay, if I'm telling them they got to do this, I got to go out and do it. My husband was like, "Have you lost your mind?" I'm like, "No, if I'm telling my young homemakers they should do it, I got to be able to do it." And it was no joke. Trust me, it was no joke. It was cold as I don't know what, but I was able to make a hot meal on the grill.
See, there you go. That's fantastic. I was such a
But they were
baby.
canned stuff though. Like I had canned meat, I had canned ground beef or canned
Mhm.
chunk beef, and
Mhm.
stuff that I could open in cans and could cook relatively quickly.
Mhm. Yeah, I think the best thing to do is to always have a good supply of it. There's sort of like the two-prong system. You can have the supply of things that don't need any cooking. So you can have
Mhm.
like protein bars and cereal and if you have powdered milk, and then you can add some water and eat that. There are a lot of dried foods, and you can also, if you have to, open a can of beans. They're not, like baked beans. They're not horrible, eating out
Mhm.
of a can. And, you can have tuna fish and, different things like that. They have canned salmon that is very tasty cold. But if you think that you want to be able to warm something up and you don't have any electricity, and maybe the weather is really bad, and you're a little baby like me, and you're not brave like Denise, to go out, in the elements, I have found, and I was shocked at how good this works. I bought one of these little cast iron things,
Mhm.
like a little cast iron grate that you put 3 little tea candles underneath, and it's terrific. It's amazing how, because it's cast iron, it really, once it gets warmed, and it really
Mhm. It
warms,
stays warm.
that stays warm like that. And I was able to make tea. I mean, I didn't have a coffee pot. I didn't have like an old fashioned coffee pot. It was
Mhm.
really funny. I had like a little Italian espresso thing. And I'm like, I have no electricity, but I'm making espresso. So silly, so silly. But I was able to, in experimenting with it, I had a little like soup pot, because the thing's not that, it's only like, about this big.
Mhm.
And I was able to warm some soup on that. I was able to warm some canned beans. I was amazed. And the nice thing about it is it's not super involved. I don't, because it gets so hot here. Our garage can be, like over 100 degrees. And I don't feel comfortable, storing propane and things like that, to have a little propane cooker, like,
Mhm.
camp stove. And, and that's me. Some people are braver than me.
Well, no,
But I
Mickey
think
Blue
those are good. I
Skies.
think those are good things to store, you know?
Yeah, Mickey Blue Skies pointed out to me that we're used to the snow and cold because, we live in Indiana and we get
Yeah.
it all the time. So she said my videos will help those, with that. She says, but we're used to the cold and snow and you are not. So we don't expect you to go out there and try to do it.
No, and it's funny growing up in New York, but the longer I lived here, the more spoiled I got, with this mild weather.
Mhm.
And now, like, I really feel the cold. It's funny, my husband and I were like wrapped in our house, like was once it hit 40 degrees and we're like, oh, inside. And we're like, oh my gosh, is it going to get colder? And we had like, you would have been laughing, Denise. I know my friends back
Oh,
then
no,
were
listen.
laughing.
We had an ice storm years ago. I think it might have been, I don't remember. There was a huge ice storm years ago and power was out all over the city, all over the state for days. Now, our power stayed on for the longest time. So I went over and got my parents. Mickey Blue Skies was still in Delaware at the time.
Okay.
So, but my parents' house, whenever the wind blows hard, their power would go out. And they had electric heat. So I went over and brought them here so that, they could be in the heat.
Yes.
I even brought my mom's bird over. My husband didn't want us to bring the bird, but I thought the bird will freeze in the cold house.
Yeah.
And then after a couple of days, our power went out. So I remember I was rushing around the house, finding blankets. And I brought them down and I was piling blankets all around my mom and dad. Cause they were old then, let alone, and because I could feel the house getting colder and colder inside.
Mm-hmm.
So my husband got a generator from one of his brothers and because somehow he got heat hooked up.
That's
and one lamp and the refrigerator. So he was able to hook up the refrigerator, a lamp, and the heat. So we had that much. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, my husband's pretty good at that kind of stuff. But
that's excellent.
But Mickey Blue Sky says, wait, is water bath canning different from any other type? She thought there was only one method.
Yeah, there's water bath canning, which is for high acid foods, and then there's pressure canning for low acid foods. So your low acid foods are going to be, like your meats and vegetables to which you've not added anything acidic. And so a lot of people will ask, for example, can you can tomatoes using a water bath canner? And you can, but you have to kind of guarantee the level of acidity. So you have to add a little citric acid or a little lemon juice, and the canning books tell you exactly how much. But jams and jellies and chutneys and different things, pickles, they can be water bath canned. But if you want to get into the heavy, and a water bath canner, you can buy an electric water bath canner, but you can also those are the electric ones, but they also have the ones for the stove that you've seen in the stores, at harvest time. They have that speckled, enameled, sort of black and white or blue and white. And those are stovetop canners. But you can also just use a stock pot, if you want that. But then pressure canners, you actually have to buy a pressure canner. And they can be a little expensive depending on what type you buy. And you have to really know what you're doing.
I want to get one, and I have not.
Yeah, I haven't. My thing is I have a glass top stove and I can't pressure can on that because I can't guarantee the consistency. If you have a gas stove, pressure canning is great. And so people have said, I should, get a little camp stove. It's something I got to think about, for doing it outside where I can have a flame to keep things the stable temperature. But the pressure canner, you have to lock everything down because it's going to do a very high pressure, like kind of similar to what they do in the factory. And why you can buy canned goods or jarred goods that are shelf stable at the grocery store. It's a great skill to have.
I can water bath can, and I did learn that from my mom, and I learned some new tips from you as well, because she always made jams and jellies and all that kind of stuff, but I've not tried the pressure canning like a meats and those kind of low acid foods. And I keep wanting to buy a pressure canner, but I have not yet done that. Valerie says another thing to keep on hand is charcoal and propane for the grill.
Yes.
But Mimsy, who is Melinda, said they don't have a grill, they don't own a grill, and until the electricity went out, they had food, but all it needed was to be cooked.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the big thing. You keep food that doesn't need to be cooked, and basically things that you like, things that can be reconstituted with water. That's it's a good time to have
Mhm.
some dehydrated food, preferably that you've dehydrated yourself,
Yes.
or and that you can eat or with a little hot water that maybe you can, do on one of those warm up on one of those little burners or something. But yeah, there's a lot of, foods that are wholesome and are real foods, but that come in cans and jars and whatnot that you can open up. Like I mentioned earlier, having like things like tuna fish and saltine crackers and salmon. I've never eaten canned chicken cold, so I can't speak to that.
Well,
But
it would be a little greasy because, you've got that little bit of broth in it and a little
yeah,
bit of fat. But I suppose you could get by with it, or you could take
yeah.
the lid off of it and put some kind of little burner underneath it to warm it up just a little bit. Now, you were talking earlier about your traditional foods pantry. And one of the things I want to mention is that you do have a traditional foods pantry list. And I talk about that and what people can expect to get from that. And I'll pull it up real quick.
Yeah, what I did was I put together, and don't be overwhelmed by it because it's 36 pages long, but it's free. And I just really wanted to create something for folks where if you're making that transition from a processed foods kitchen to a traditional foods kitchen, and you're not really sure what you want to buy, in this list, I've put everything. Now, there may be things you don't like or you don't want to buy, and that's fine, but you will have this list where I go through, and it includes perishable as well as non-perishable foods, and they're all real foods. So I
Mhm.
go through all the whole grains, I go through, all the different kinds of meats, different kinds of dairy that are considered real foods, that are
Mhm.
not processed in any way or prepared foods in any way. They're just real foods. And then I have a lot of links wherever I had made a video and have a recipe, I have links. So if you're keeping your list online, or you can have it on your phone with you when you go to the grocery store. You don't have to print it out. Like I said, it's 36 pages, but you can click on the link, and then like where I talk about bone broth, the bones that the different types of combinations of bones that you may want to make different types of bone broth, whether it's beef bone broth or chicken bone broth or fish bone broth. Fish bone broth is very easy to make, and it's basically,
I made some.
it costs nothing to make. Once you get, I was at Whole Foods, which is like a, fancy store. And I said to the fishmonger, gee, I'd like to buy some fish bones. And he said, oh, don't even worry about it. I'm filleting some fish now. I'll give you the bones. And he was so nice. He wrapped them up in brown paper. I had the head and the tail, and then the carcass, if that's what it's called in a fish,
Mhm.
wrapped it up in brown paper and wrote free on it. It was so nice to me, and sometimes
Well,
you
I
just,
made bone broth, the fish bone broth, because I'm married to the big fisherman of the
you are, yes.
and he always brings home fish, and so I had him save the once he had cleaned it and processed
Mhm.
it, I had him save the carcasses, and I made bone broth. Now the problem with that though is that I have to really be careful about straining it, and
Yes.
because with the fish that he gets, you have to make sure you don't get any bones in
Yes.
that once you get it cooked down, because it is so soft. But it turned out pretty good, and then I made fish stew with that fish bone
Oh,
broth, and it
wonderful.
was pretty good. It
Yeah,
was
oh,
actually pretty good.
that sounds wonderful. But yeah, so that can be very, helpful to folks, especially, as you're on this journey. So you can look at these different foods, because a lot of people will say, oh, okay, great. Well, now I bought some einkorn grain. What the heck do I do with it? So I have links where you can click on the link, and then you can watch a video, about how to bake with einkorn flour or whatever the case may be. So I really hope that, this is, I got to tell you, Denise, I got such a passion for this. I really really want to keep
We
these
can
traditions
tell.
alive.
We can tell. And I have really enjoyed learning about these traditions from you, Mary. And it's just really made me think a lot differently about foods and the kind of topics that I bring to my young homemakers, just things that they just hadn't thought about before. One of my nieces, I had told her, well, do you have flour and baking powder? And she said, no, she didn't bake anything. I said, honey, you need to have that stuff in. So if you need to make pancakes or biscuits or something for
Mhm,
your children, if you can't get out, you can do that.
mhm.
So, and this is a
That's
good
so
time to
true.
talk about your series for the pantry and encourage others to check it out. So let's talk about your for the pantry series. And some of them include how to make your own mixes and things like that. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, a lot of people, even though I like the idea of primarily having traditional foods in the kitchen, that are the nutrient dense and whatnot, I don't expect people to do this, as I said, overnight. It's you just set yourself up for failure and you feel stressed. And so I had a lot of requests from people who would say, gee, all I would really like to know how to do is to make pre-made mix for
Mm-hmm.
cake mix, so I no longer have to
Italian
buy.
seasoning.
Yeah, so I no longer have to buy the box cake mix.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, "Oh my gosh, that's exactly. I remember my mother doing this, just from a thrifty standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
because back then a lot of the box foods didn't have as many chemicals as they have today, but you know,
Mm-hmm.
she said, "Oh, it's not in the budget." And so I shared, cake mixes and cookie mixes and pancake mix and brownie mix and different things like that. That, like you were saying, just earlier, you can just throw these things together, put it all in a jar, and then all you need to do is add the wet ingredients.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I really wanted to show people that it's a lot easier than they think it is. Sometimes
Yeah,
people.
you've got a whole series about those for the pantry videos. So
Yeah.
I didn't think to link that series
Oh, don't
here.
worry about it.
But I encourage you guys to go over to Mary's channel and see her for the pantry series, because she's got how to make pancake mix, how to make Italian seasoning, how to make cottage cheese. There are so many how to make things that you can do. Now, let me ask you this. Do you remember the one item that I was just like freaked out when you said I
I
need this to make bone broth?
I do. When I told you throw in some chicken feet, you said, "What?"
I was like, chicken feet. And you know what, though? I thought, okay, chicken feet. She's got to be kidding. But then I thought, okay, I'm just going to see if I can even find chicken feet. I thought, you can't find chicken feet in the store. So I
Right?
called Kroger. They're like, are you kidding me? But I did find some. And guess where I found it?
I'm thinking Walmart, maybe.
Walmart. I found it at Walmart, and they call it chicken paws.
When you told me that, I couldn't stop laughing. I said, "Oh my gosh, that, to this New York City girl, chicken paws." It just sounds so country.
Yeah, they call it
I
chicken
thought it
paws.
was so cute.
And it is really inexpensive, but so I've got some in the freezer and I was going to try to find it, before time for the show, but I've been so busy because I wanted to hold one up and say, this is what chicken feet looks like. But yeah, but there's that. So now let me answer this question. But before I answer this question, you guys go over to Mary's channel though and check out her bone broth series, her for the pantry series. She's got so
Oh,
many cool things.
thank you, Denise.
Khadijah wants to know, do I have a video on cleaning fish? And I don't think so. I don't know. I might. I've watched my husband clean fish so often, and I videotaped him doing it several times. But whether or not I actually got the video edited and uploaded, I don't know. But I will. But somebody said they wanted to see me cleaning the fish and not the man. I'm like, that ain't gonna happen. I don't clean fish. He does all of that. He cleans them, he fillets them. He ends up when they're all these nice little bag fillets. But yeah, but I will try to capture that for you guys.
Oh,
So
that'll
now,
be
Mary,
good.
I've had you on longer than an hour, and I certainly didn't mean to. Let me find that. Let's get that off.
Mickey, I'm just looking at the comment. I know, Mickey, chicken paws. Isn't that something?
Where is it? I can't find it. I can't. I'm just like, I'm just losing track because there's so many people in there talking about stuff. But oh, they said Mary shared that book, Amish canning recipes. So what is that book, Mary?
Oh, that's a cookbook, and it's, I think if that's what she's asking about, the the Amish canning recipes, and then they also have the Amish recipes. And I don't have that book in front of me, but I think if you just like go into Amazon or any place like Barnes and Nobles or any book place and put Amish canning or Amish canning recipes, and that book should come up. That's a very helpful book. And
Who's
it's
it
got,
by?
I don't know. It's like by, I think there's one main author, but I can't think of her name.
Okay, I'll look
Uh,
for it.
but and the one I have is, and I think it's still sold this way, is Spiral Bound.
Okay.
And it's a collection of recipes from Amish women, and they're
Oh.
all things that can be canned, and they're very nice, homey, old-fashioned type things. And it's a nice book to have to supplement, like if you have like the basic ball canning book.
I got
This
that.
Amish one has more, a little bit of creative recipes.
I'm from Indiana, born and raised right here, and my husband is from somewhere in the South, and now he's been in Indiana since he was 10, so it doesn't count. Let's see, Mary, you just got a new subscriber. If you guys are not familiar with Mary at Mary's Nest, please go over and subscribe to her YouTube channel. Mary,
Oh,
I will
this is so
try.
sweet.
Let's get to the, somebody said something about the chicken feet. Chicken paws, yeah, that's what they
Yeah,
call
that was
it in
Mickey,
Walmart.
your sister.
Yeah, and
That's funny.
they buy chicken feet. Linda buys it from the local processor, but cannot find them in Chicago, Milwaukee area.
Oh, Georgia, Little Country Cabin, that's Jackie. That's our friend Jackie. And she's saying Georgia Varosa is the author of the one I have. Georgia Varosa, Varroza. Hi, Jackie. Thanks so much
Okay.
for knowing that.
Oh, there she is. Oh, wait, nope, nope. There she is. Okay, all right, there's that.
Georgia
And
Varosa.
one more quick question, and then we'll do the lightning round. Because Mary, I promised you I wouldn't keep you long, and your husband's probably like, "Will she just quit talking?"
He knows. I'm just
He
thinking
knows how we
when
are.
we get on the phone, he's like, my gosh, what do you ladies say?
So here's the question from Barbara, and then I'll do the lightning round.
What is the best way to store dry pasta other than canning jars? You've tried food saver bags, but the pasta poked holes, yes. You know what I really like to do? I like to get those big 5-gallon storage containers.
Oh,
And I think, Denise, you have a video. You've got some great tips on how to get those
yes,
free.
yep.
I bought food safe ones at Lowe's, but like I got them years ago when they were more reasonable. I think with everything that's been going on now, they're kind of expensive. But you can get them, as Denise shares in her video, from different places, and you just wash
Kroger.
them out. But what I like to do is put and it depends how you're buying your pasta. I like to put bay leaves. I'm not comfortable using diatomaceous earth, but some people are, and that will kill any bug. So you don't have to worry about it. And they say it's food safe and all of this, but what I'll do is I'll put bay leaves on the bottom of the bucket, which doesn't kill the bugs, but it helps deter them because they don't like the smell of the bay leaves. And then if I've bought some kind of pasta in bulk, like elbows or shapes and stuff, I'll pour them right in, and then I'll put in some what are they, the things that absorb moisture.
Oh, oxygen moisturizers.
I don't use the oxygen
Oh, the
absorbers.
moisture
The
absorbers.
moisture ones, yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm like drawing a blank, but I put those in and then I seal it up. I don't use any oxygen absorbers because I'll be opening that all the time, and then the oxygen is getting in and those things are shot right away. I prefer the oxygen absorbers for the Mylar bags that I'm like storing things, but I find that works really well. And then the other thing I do is if I've bought spaghetti and I want to keep it in the box, I will just put all the boxes. It's like a little puzzle, and I'll slide them down into the
Just slide the box in. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
I was telling you guys, I got my food grade containers. You can get them at Kroger from the deli. Like I just go to the deli and ask if they have any empty icing containers or frosting containers, and they'll give you the container with the lid. Walmart sells theirs for about $1.50, the container with the lid, but Kroger's will give them away for free. You just got to clean them out, and that's a whole, different story within itself. Well, there's that. So now let me go ahead and get to the lightning round, because I did promise you I wouldn't keep you on forever, but let me get that off.
You're so sweet.
Okay, let me find it. We got through like maybe half the notes, but okay.
Well, this is so much fun. You're so sweet to have me.
This is fun. I thought we'd be on here for another hour. Where's the lightning round? It's on here. 6. Check the questions. Question of the day. Closing. Oh, here it is. All right, Mary, lightning round. Okay, ladies, you guys ready for the lightning round? Boom. All right. Bath or shower?
Oh, definitely shower.
Coffee or tea?
Oh, coffee.
The Godfather or From the Terrace?
Oh my gosh, I'll have to go with The Godfather only because I don't know the other movie.
Oh, I'm surprised. From the Terrace is a 1960s movie about an ambitious young executive who chooses a loveless marriage and unfulfilling life in exchange for a Wall Street career.
Oh my goodness, that sounds good.
All right. A Prince for Christmas or Legally Blonde?
Oh my gosh, Legally Blonde. I never laughed so hard.
You chose that over a Prince for Christmas?
I know. And I have to tell you that I love that one, A Prince for Christmas. But if you ever need a laugh, and boy, have we need, I actually own the DVD of Legally Blonde.
I love Legally Blonde. It's one of my favorite movies when I just want to veg out.
Yes.
I've had a really stressful week and I wanted to sit there and watch something I don't have to think about. Legally Blonde, and I also like Capital Barbie, which is Legally Blonde 2.
Oh, I haven't seen that. I'll have to see that.
Well, Legally Blonde 2 was the name of it. It's not called Capital Barbie, but somebody teased her and called her Capital Barbie in the film.
Oh,
but
isn't that fun? Well,
Legally Blonde 2 was really good too.
I love Legally Blonde. I mean, that you just laugh from one scene to the next. It takes your mind off of everything.
Okay, so now see, Mia says From the Terrace is one of her favorites.
Oh, I'm going to have to see that.
Okay, so now oven roasted chicken or Texas crock pot chili?
Oh, oven roasted chicken. I could roast a chicken every day if my family would put up with it.
Okay, so breakfast muffins or pickled veggie scraps?
Oh, I'd have to go with the breakfast muffins.
Okay, skirts or jeans?
Oh, jeans. I'm not a fashion plate.
Hey, that's okay. Well, Mary, I want to thank you so much for just spending your time with us. How can the viewers connect with you again? Tell us how they can connect with you.
Oh, Denise, thank you so much for having me, first of all. And you can find me. I'm on YouTube like Denise, at Mary's Nest. And I also have a corresponding website by the same name, Mary's Nest. And you can always contact me through my website if you want to email or something like that. And I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
You have 3 Facebook channels. You have 3 Facebook channels.
Oh, well, I got the personal one and then the Mary's Nest one. And then I have a little Facebook group where that I formed that because that's really nice, because anybody who joins that can post, and it's free to join, and you can post in the Facebook group. And it's great because now people can take pictures and say, this is my sauerkraut. Is it like doing okay? Or this is my vinegar, or this is my bone broth. Look at how gelatinous it is. And I love that because
tell me about your, I saw something else on your channel. It was Kitchen Academy. Tell us about your Kitchen Academy.
Oh, I started that. That's like how YouTube has the little, you can join like a little private group and subscribe to that. And the reason that I did that was because I really like talking about this stuff. I really like talking about traditional foods. And I sometimes will go very long in my videos because I'm very passionate about it. And sometimes people would say, wow, the video's a little long. And so, but I was really hearing from a smaller group of people who said, oh, I really appreciate the level of detail. So I formed the little kitchen academy, and we, I go live in that group. I go live once a month
Mm-hmm.
where we talk and get to know each other and talk about our questions and solving problems and things like that. And then throughout the month, I'll periodically put up videos that are very detailed where I'm talking. It's like what they call like a vodcast. You can watch it, but I'm
Yes.
primarily talking, and I go into a lot of detail that might, unless you're really passionate about it, might be a little overwhelming. But I go into, like, I did a 3-part series on sourdough starter, and right now I'm doing a 3-part series on ferments, that are like very troubling and things like that. And so it's just a way that I can share with people who really are interested in diving deep on this subject.
I have to apologize too. Now, we've been talking about so many different things, and I have to apologize because a couple of times, I cut you off so I could bring in another thing. But like I was, like we were saying, you and I will talk forever.
Oh, I know we will.
Yeah, we will. And so I do apologize for cutting you off, because I know a couple of people are probably wondering, well, she didn't finish that piece. And, maybe there's something else you want to say. So is there anything you want to add?
Oh, no, Denise, you are so sweet. You didn't cut me off at all. And everything that you add is very knowledgeable too. I think that, I love the way you are encapsulating the whole traditional homemaker movement. I've got this like little corner over here about the cooking, but I think you and I both have that passion for
Mm-hmm.
really wanting to keep these skills alive,
Yeah.
and so much of it is getting lost and fallen to the wayside, and you make you feel a little sad, so I love that that you've got you have the whole umbrella
Thank
of
you.
being the traditional homemaker. And I just love that because it really reminds me, uh, of how I grew up with my mom. She was always a very traditional homemaker, yet a very like yourself. I mean, you're a professional woman, it's not, you're very well educated and you're professional, and yet the value of
Exactly.
traditional homemaking and what a difference it makes.
It,
And so I really appreciate all that you do and share with us. And that's why, I always tell people, oh, do you know Denise? When they say, oh, Mary, can you do a video on X and such? And I'm like, oh, I don't do videos on that, but do you know Denise?
well, I want to certainly encourage everybody on the chat to go over and, become a member of your family. Look at all that she has to offer. Download her Four Corners Pantry, the 36-page guide. I'm old school. I want to be able to pick it up and read it. So
I know, I am too. I printed mine out. I got it in my kitchen journal.
Right. And then you can kind of highlight different things, and you can mark things here and there. So I encourage you guys to do that. And Mary, I hate to let you go, but I did promise. So
and you're so sweet. You're so sweet. I'll let everybody know. I told Denise before we went live, I have those of you who know me know this already, but I have a puppy. And my husband, but if we had him in the kitchen here, it would be a little bedlam. He's a doll and we love him, but he's a puppy. And so my husband took him for a good, healthy walk. And now we got one of those little plastic tiny pools at
little
Walmart,
baby pools.
the baby pools. And so my husband's entertaining him in the courtyard, but I know he'll look forward to being relieved.
Yes, my husband's ready to come inside. So,
I know he'd be like,
and I
oh,
said, thank you.
he's so happy when, I tell him, oh no, there's some men in the chat. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Burl, but it's funny. But thank you so much. You're such a doll for having me. I always love being able to chat with you.
Yes, we'll have to do it again soon. So I'm going to let you go so that Ted can come in the house. And then I got a few things I'm going to tell the other people. So I'm going to pop you off the screen. You don't have to leave if you don't want to, but I don't want to make you feel obligated to stay. So
All righty.
thanks again. I'll connect with you again soon.
Oh, thank you. I love you, Denise. Have a wonderful evening, and
Thank
good
you
night to
too.
everyone.
Bye. All right, guys. Wasn't she amazing? Oh my goodness. I just really hated to let her go. And thank you for saying it was a great show. There was I had more questions that I could ask. And, I kept thinking, oh my goodness, she's just so amazing. And I promised her I'd only keep her on for an hour. And I kept thinking, okay, but I'm not going to get to all the questions on the list. So I thought, okay, you know what? We're just not going to get to all the questions on the list. She's just got so much more stuff to share with us. So yes, she was a great guest. So now there was a couple of things I wanted to be sure to share. So let me find that. So as we get ready to land the plane, as Sean says, from Sean Cannell, let me just remind you guys that ask you guys for the question of the day and ask you guys, what is your takeaway from tonight's show? What was your aha moment from the things that Mary shared with us? How can you maybe move to a no-waste kitchen? Or how can you use up more of those scraps? Have you thought about making your own bone broth or whatever? Tell me what your aha moment was. And if you don't mind, leave me a note here in the chat. As well as, if you don't mind, could you copy and paste it into the comment section, because that really helped my analytics. And so Michelle says she can't wait to see who I'll have on next week. Well, Michelle. And then Mariah says, thank you, Mariah. I appreciate that. But Michelle wants to know who's coming on next week. Well, the answer to that question is Robin from Faith and Flour is coming on next week, and Kenya from Kenya's Decor Corner. So it's going to be a Texas week for the next 3 weeks. Mary from the Texas Hill Country tonight. Robin from Faith and Flour, who lives down the road from Mary, she's going to be on. And then Kenya from Kenya's Decor Corner is also a fellow Texan. So like I said, a Texan suite. So that's what's going to be coming on in the next few shows. Also, let me invite you guys back to check out my latest video, which is a one-pot meal where I made country-style ribs in the crock pot. And also be sure to check out my video, Stopped Prepping, It's Time to Get Back at It. I'll link both of those with an iCard above and then in the description box below. Yes, I hate to say it, you guys really do need to start stocking up and prepping, and do download Mary's extended pantry list. I think you'll be very glad you did. And if you missed last week, you guys missed Fly Lady Cat. She was amazing, as well as Michelle from My Everyday Wife Life was on a couple weeks before that. So you want to make sure to check those out. And also be sure to check out Apron Diva and our apron for tonight, our featured apron, which is 10% off. You've got your discount code Chris10. So there's that. And let's see, in the meantime, I guess this is Denise Jordan saying, you're not done yet. Click on the link in the comment section and check out another of my homemaking stories or one of my Homemaking with Purpose shows. You will be glad you did. And I will see you guys next time. So Michelle started stocking back up today. Mickey says all the guests have been amazing. And Valerie's going to set her clock. It's been fun. So I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye, everyone. Yes, please give me a thumbs up and goodbye. Oh, before I say goodbye, one more thing, since Michelle is on there, I did want to say that Michelle's collaboration, the One Box Challenge, drops on September 30th. And so if you've got gently used things that you need to move out of your house that you want to donate, or things you need to discard, check out Michelle's channel on her community tab. She'll have all the instructions for her One Box Challenge. So there's that. All right. Everybody have a good night and goodbye.